Hi there, welcome everybody. I'm Dave Etka. I'm the director here at the Louisville Small Business Development Center. Thanks for joining us for another Toolkit Tuesday. I really appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy day to stop in and visit with us. As you know, if you haven't heard of the SBDC, we are free resources. We are a national organization. We have centers all over the country, and we have actually 14 here in the state of Kentucky, which you can access for free. Just go to KentuckySBDC.com and you can contact your local SBDC at any time. We're always looking forward to hearing from you. So thank you for joining us today, and reach out if you think you can help, if we can help you guys out. And as always, because we are, as you know, and I say it all the time, but we are technologically challenged. If you just look at the bottom of your screen, you should see a toolbar down there. There you will see the little chat button. If you don't see the toolbar, just take your cursor, hover over there, it should pop up. But click on the chat and just type in your name and tell me where you're joining from so I can know that you can hear and see me okay. And I pressed all the right buttons today. And I do like to know where everybody is. So if you just say where you're joining from, we can get a little running start from, well, there's Ann Shadle from Louisville, Kentucky. Hey, Ann. First one in. Anybody else out there want to say hello so we can hear you? I know you're out there because I can see you. I can see all you guys. So tell us where you're joining from and tell us your name and tell me hello. There we go. There's Sierra. Hey, Dave. Good to see you. I haven't seen you on here in a while, so thanks for joining again. If you're in the Louisville area, Dave Sauerbach owns the Sauerbach Family Drive-In in LaGrange. Go out there and check it out. It's great, great time. Prem Raj from Louisville, thanks for joining us. All right. So let me tell you a little story. I think sometime last year, oh, there's Eric from Lexington. All right, Eric, how are you? Last year I was traveling and I had the opportunity to stop into Zanesville, Ohio and meet a couple of folks that own a dental practice. And, you know, when you go into a dental practice, you think, you know, just go in there and get your teeth done and stuff. But I was just blown away by the systems and the processes that were put in this place to make this dental practice so efficient. And it's something I talk about all the time about putting systems in a business to ensure quality and increase profitability and throughput. But Nancy Sulins, who is our guest today, who have finally, after many months of cajoling, has agreed to talk to us today, really took this to the highest level I had ever seen, and I was just so blown away, and I never forgot it. And so I'd been talking to her for a while about getting her to share some of how she did this, you know, because it's these little things that make all the difference in a business. What do you think about that, Nancy?
I'd say that's pretty high praise. Thanks, Dave. I think you're talking me up or talking our office up more than potentially is really warranted. However, I'm happy to share share some stuff that we've done along the way.
I've worked with a ton of dentist practices and doctor's offices that have helped, you know, get financed and other things. And you by far were the most efficient I'd ever seen. So I thought you should come and share all these little things because I know they're translatable to any other business. And I think if you guys out there just take one little piece of knowledge out of from Nancy today, I think you'll be way ahead of the game. So Nancy, I'm just going to hand it to you. Let's get started.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Dave, for having me. And I guess I just want to share with everyone, I have been out of like the world of online meetings. Like I didn't ever really need to do that in the dental world. So please just bear with me as we're going through this. But I'm going to try to share my desktop and make this happen. Slideshow. Okay. Can you see it?
Great. I'm gonna step
awesome. Back. Okay.
You do it.
Sounds good. Okay. So as Dave said, I'm Nancy Sulins and I am in Zanesville, Ohio, and that's about 1 hour east of Columbus. I'm kind of born and raised in Central Ohio, but moved to Zanesville with my husband and actually through some work, but I'll get a little more into that later. So my background is in Lean Six Sigma, and it's been really fun to incorporate that into our dental office. So without further ado, the Lean Dentist. So I am an Ohio Wesleyan grad. It's a small town, a small liberal arts school in Ohio. My major was pre-health studies, chemistry, and French. My whole goal was to be a doctor, took the MCAT, applied to some schools, and decided, maybe I should not push towards this so quickly. I actually had an academic advisor when I was in school that was like, hey, maybe you're more looking on the hospital administration side. Like, I feel like that would be your strength. But I really was very annoyed and said, who are you to tell me what I should do with my life? I'm definitely going to do that, but decided to take a gap year, and it was the best decision I ever made. So in that gap year, I started working at Nationwide Children's Hospital. I'm sure everyone's probably heard of it. It's a fantastic hospital in Columbus, and started my time there in management. I managed some registration side of things. I was just like, I feel like in many fields of work, I was really good at what I did very quickly. But it was registration. It was very basic. It wasn't really anything mind blowing. However, I was good at what I did, and I was a responsible employee. So they promoted me after 6 weeks at 22 years old. So I had, I think, 40 some employees reporting to me while I was doing that. Learned a lot about management along the way, but was also introduced to Lean and Six Sigma during my time at Nationwide Children's. Found it super interesting, did some projects with our business process improvement group there. That's focus was Lean Six Sigma, had some initial training, and they actually hired me and started my training process while I was there. About 5 years into my time at Nationwide Children's, I was recruited to Genesis Healthcare, which is where I am now in Zanesville, into work at the Lean Six Sigma department. While I was working for Genesis, I did get my Lean Six Sigma Black Belt certification, as well as project management professional certification, did Lean Six Sigma for a solid, 3.5 years, loved it. Was able to be involved in a lot of different awesome projects, see a lot of benefits, and really, I guess, reduce waste and defects and all that kind of stuff along the way. And it was a really awesome experience. They really grasped on to the benefit of it in that organization. I shifted gears a little bit, did some strategic planning while I was there, and then actually went into the sunset of my career at Genesis, managing physician practices and physicians. I had about 111, I think, physicians that I worked with at the time and oversaw their different practices, had to give them feedback, doctors that had never been given feedback before, and work with them on establishing positive change. So that was a fun experience, but something I actually really loved. And had our first son while I was in that role. And it just got really crazy. All this work was, I was on the side trying to run my husband's dental office. Don't recommend doing that. But yeah, so I did that on the side. And at a certain point, I think my son was like 9 months old. I was just like, I can't do all of the things. I remember vividly, it was Friday, 9 o'clock, and I was trying to put him to bed, and I was getting endless calls from ER physicians because their world is only on fire. It's never just chill. They could not wait. So at that point, I was like, what am I doing? What are we doing? I just need to focus on the office. So I quote unquote retired, as my husband said, to become the full-time business manager at Solon's Dental Studio. Best decision I've ever made. So a little bit about us. We purchased the practice in April of 2013 and then got married shortly after in June of 2013. So it's been fully a part of us and our relationship. And it's an awesome endeavor. Obviously, you run into our dinner conversations are fully about the practice, the majority of the time. However, it's a really great journey to be on together. We have 3 crazy, active, super fun, insanely smart, like ridiculous boys. They're 2, 5, 7, and 7, almost 8. I spend my time outside the office, running them to all sorts of sporting events and activities, and helping run some administration stuff at the school. We're going through some big changes there, coordinating all of the family activities because no one can just sit still in our household, and then endlessly planning vacations. I feel like that's one of my very favorite things to do. That's what I live for. And one of the biggest benefits of working for yourself, and I'm sure you all know this too, I don't have to worry about PTO. And luckily I have a boss that lets me take vacations because he gets to go along with them. I do occasionally contract for light process improvement projects on the side. I put light in quotes. That's never anything light. I've done that a lot less since we've had our 3rd child. So in the past 3 years, I don't do that too much, but I do several strategic planning events throughout the year with some not-for-profit organizations, which I love. I love being able to still connect with the community and do different things. So yeah, so it's not. there it is. Okay. Oh, those are my 3 boys. Yep. And vacation again, something we love to do. So, kind of want to talk a little bit about dentistry, a real quick introduction. Dentistry is broken into like 3 main components. Administrative, which is our front and back office team. They kind of handle the registration, the insurance information, the patient, I guess, logistical information, and making sure that we can, bill effectively and that we're scheduling effectively too. They also handle a lot of our patient interactions, our outward facing things. We send a lot of patient cards, make sure that we're, getting patients into the schedule whenever they need to, all that kind of stuff. Our hygienists, these are what most people think of when they think of coming to the dentist when you get your teeth cleaned. So we have 4 hygienists, but they're on the more preventative side of dentistry. So preventative is when you get your teeth cleaned, you get your full assessment to see what's going on, check the health of your teeth. So we have, again, 4 hygienists, and then the restorative side of the world, which is our assistants and our FDAs, and then the dentist. Dr. Mike needs to be in all places. He has to be a part of everything except for the administrative side, which is lovely that I got to come in and kind of take that over for him. But yeah, he still needs to go in and check all the hygiene visits as well as take care of all the restorative patients. So again, we'll talk a little bit more. This is a very wordy slide. You don't need to read it all, but front office, I kind of talked through what their responsibility is. Hygienist, I think everyone kind of knows what a dental hygienist is. Hopefully everyone's getting fairly regular cleanings, but they're the people that are cleaning your teeth, taking the x-rays, kind of doing that initial assessment. And then our hygienists can also, they all have additional training that they can also anesthetize. The state of Ohio might have different rules than Kentucky, but they can anesthetize and administer nitrous oxide. An assistant is basically the person that is next to Mike all day, that makes sure that he has everything he needs to be successful in his job. They do all chairside dentistry, the sterilization to make sure everything's clean, interview the patients and take steps to help provide Mike with any information he's needed to diagnose any concerns. They document all care, make sure that we're crossing our T's, dotting our I's, doing all the things, order supplies. And I mean, they really just are like the person that runs, Mike's life. I feel like they're his work wives, because we have all female assistants at this point. And then we have several FDAs also. And FDA is like an advanced assistant. It's an expanded function dental assistant. Sorry, I didn't put that in there, but they can do reversible dentistry. So they do everything that an assistant does, but they can do reversible dentistry also. So if you think about when you go into the dental office, say you have a cavity, and you'll come in, you'll get number for your appointment. Dr. Mike comes in, cleans out the decay in your tooth, and then an FDA will come in and actually place that restoration. They do the filling. Fillings and sealants and that kind of thing are something that we do day in and day out. They're a huge bread and butter part of dentistry, but they're not super profitable. You just can't bill a ton off of those. So an FDA is nice because it's another resource that you can utilize to place those fillings and to do those things. And then Mike can go on and do some more, I guess, higher dollar cases or see more patients that might need to be seen. So the FDA is like a super helpful role, but they can only do reversible dentistry. And then obviously the dentist, I think everyone kind of knows what that is, but the role is to promote and educate on oral hygiene and disease prevention, diagnose and treat any dental decay, make sure that we're restoring oral health, so much more. But those are kind of the different roles within the dental office. And then just kind of wanted to show what our like schedule looks like. And then we'll dive into more of like all the things we've kind of done from Lean and Six Sigma. So the schedule here shows I guess the way that we're broken down. So on this left side, the blue columns of patients, those are restorative patients. So these are the patients that Mike specifically has to like see and take care of. They're allocated just onto his schedule. So there's all sorts of information on here, but you can see kind of there's a time block. This is telling you what the procedure is. It doesn't mean much to a lot of people, but it just shows you kind of the layout of the day. And then over here, we have hygiene patients, and they're color coded by their provider, by the resource that's seeing them. So this one is like Olivia, this one's Lisa, this one's Natalie. This just didn't get changed colors yet. And then this is Alicia. So it's who's seeing, you know, the patient, and then it's typically like what room they're in also, which is super helpful. Over here on the far right side, we have something called Fast Track, and we can explain that. I'll explain that more a little bit later, but all of these hygiene visits are mostly visits that are with the hygienist for the majority of the time. Again, think about when you've gone to the dentist, you go in, you get your teeth cleaned, and then the doctor always just pops in for a few minutes to do an exam, to check in, to identify any issues, to diagnose, and then come up with a treatment plan for what needs to be done. So the majority of the time for these visits is always with the hygienist. The hygienist is a resource that they're scheduling, but Mike needs to stop in for a period of time of all of these visits. And then he is in for the majority of these restorative visits, but just these ones are like filling patients. So he would go in, these patients would be numb, he'd prep the tooth, and then an EFTA would go in and fill the tooth. So this is just kind of basics on the schedule. I hope that makes sense. I'm sure I've missed something, but we'll go from there. So this is to tell you how we went basically from this to this. I'm a big Napoleon Dynamite fan. We're a little quirky in our office. Obviously a huge step up in that transformation, but just to, yeah, this Zoom thing's weird. There's 0 feedback, but hopefully people found it amusing. So where we started, this is where, when we purchased the office in 2013, what the building looked like. And the building actually from this picture looks fantastic compared to kind of what it did really in person. It was built in the 60s. It was a colonial style building, totally fine. It totally met the needs of what we needed to do, but it was originally built that we, I guess, utilized this side, or the original dentist, he utilized this side, and then this side was an OBGYN, and then in the basement there was another space. But it's a 4-operatory practice. Originally it was, and we had 2 dentists, 2 assistants, 2 hygienists, and then 2 administrators. So it was a team of 8. And again, I just want to emphasize it was 4 operatories. So that means we had 2 hygienists taking up 2 rooms, and then each doctor worked out of 1 room. So there's a lot of benefits to that. However, there's downtime in dentistry. You know, when a patient's getting numb, that usually takes, you know, like 10 minutes. So then what's the doctor going to do in the middle? So there was a lot of downtime that we could have been utilizing differently if they had a few more resources. Now, too many resources can water down and slow things down, but yeah, that 4-room space was not sufficient for what we needed. Our first year production with Dr. Mike and then Dr. Chris was the dentist, was close to $900,000. And I think the year before, when it was just Dr. Chris, I think his production was like $615,000. So it was a big jump adding Mike. And then also, I guess I should add when Mike finished school, we immediately purchased the practice. It was kind of a different path than a lot of dentists straight out of school, but we immediately purchased the practice, and then the owner, Dr. Chris, became Mike's associate. Unfortunately, he'd been battling some health issues for quite some time, and so he could no longer manage it, but still wanted to do some dentistry. So it was kind of a nice shift, even though the space was outdated, but like the quality of patients was phenomenal. His reputation was great, and he and Mike really clicked in the type of dentistry they were doing. So yeah, so it was a very kind of a different setup than what you would normally have when you're straight out of school. But this space was outdated facilities that really just didn't reflect the type of care we provided or the persona of Mike. He would just get frustrated so often. Much of our instruments and equipment were just kind of old and outdated. We were, I mean, for example, manually developing film. We had a dark room, and our hygienist would be taking x-rays, those, you know, when they put that big like bite stick everyone hates in, and then they put the tube head up to your mouth and take individual x-rays, and then they would go and develop them in a dark room, which is crazy. We don't even do the tube head x-rays very much anymore, just because they're a pain and no one likes them. And we have other options, but we felt as if we were constantly fixing things. Things were constantly breaking, and it just was incredibly frustrating. This is quick layout of our space. So this was our waiting room. It's a terrible picture. My picture taking has improved also over time, thank God. And then I couldn't find a good picture of an operatory, but this was an operatory, and like even the shelving and the cabinetry that we used was set up for like an office. It was wood cabinetry, not made for anything that would potentially be getting wet. And it just wasn't ideal. It had worked at the time when it was built, but it hadn't been updated since the 60s, and it just really needed some change. So this is where we are now. A whole host of other pictures I could share, but basically this is our building. We did a major renovation. We started planning for it in 2017. And with that, obviously we've had a lot of growth and changes, but we went from that 4 operatory practice to a 9 operatory practice. Well, it started at 7. We've since added 2 more, but we've grown a ton. We now have, obviously, we have 1 dentist. Our Dr. Chris unfortunately passed away. We have 4 hygienists, and we have 4 assistants / FDAs, so 2 assistants, 2 FDAs, 3 administrators, and then 1 business manager. So we've grown a lot from that perspective. Also, this bottom left space, just because I was trying to show comparable photos, this is our waiting room. We really wanted it to be I don't know, a fun space that just reflected our personality, and really the concept of like the art of dentistry and kind of doing things differently than what you think of with a traditional dentist. And then the top right picture is a picture of an operatory. And while our operatories, the majority of them are very similar, the majority of them, we do different work out of the operatories. They're all set up the same, and they all look fairly similar. So the same things are in each drawer. So even if you're coming in for a hygiene visit, say you had a small cavity you needed fixed right afterwards, we could keep you in that room. The hygienist go see her next patient in a different room. We still have the capacity to do everything out of every room, which is awesome. We're kind of state-of-the-art facilities with proactive maintenance. And this feels so silly that I included this, but I felt like we spent so much time before with the rework of trying to fix broken equipment and problem solve with what issues we had going on. So yeah, quick summary, I guess. So where does Lean Six Sigma come in? Again, I kind of shared my background as in Lean and Six Sigma. I don't want to get too wordy, too complicated, too difficult, but I only picked this picture because I was like, what in the world? What are these characters? I was trying to find a good visual. It's very strange, but anyway, I thought it was funny. The rest of them were terrible, but the concept of lean is to eliminate waste, increase efficiency, and deliver the value to the customer. So it really focuses on that value for the customer. How do you do things that contribute to that value, and everything else is waste? It really focuses on an observation approach and doesn't really require a ton of extensive statistical analysis. The focus is really on that workflow. Six Sigma, I feel like that's always the scarier one for people to think about, but it reduces defects and variation, and improves quality and efficiency. So it's really just about improving that quality by reducing defects and then having that anticipated flow every single time. I think if you've heard of the Six Sigma concept is to minimize the amount of defects that come out of your process. Totally data-driven approach, which is fantastic and something that, I love, because data doesn't lie, but it does involve a little bit more statistical analysis, and the focus is generally like on the problem. But the two of them together, it's a superpower of problem solving strategies, deeper understanding of issues, and more effective solutions. I feel like it's hard to really like pull them apart. There's so many awesome tools on both sides of Lean and Six Sigma. And I guess we kind of just pick and choose and utilize what works best for our scenario. So I've really, at our office, focused on the lean side of things, simply because I think walking in, I saw a lot more just straight off the top opportunity of things to fix, low hanging fruit. So a little bit more of a dive into lean. Lean's a concept of process improvement that creates value for customers by minimizing waste. So what does your customer value about your business? What's important to them? And hopefully you guys had this one identified. What is it that's important? What contributes to that value? So there's pieces of your flow, pieces of your puzzle that you need to have that support that value. But then where's the waste? How do you eliminate? Focus on the process to determine your opportunities. So you really just have to keep going back to the process. What does the process look like? What adds value and what doesn't? Waste is anything that doesn't contribute to your value. And I'm going to go through examples of waste and what we've done with those. So lean thinking is you identify your value and you create a value stream, like a flow, a process map. And you identify opportunities for waste in that. And that's when you're continually cutting those out, establishing a new flow. And then that whole concept of pull rather than pushing. So that's like, I guess Toyota really pushed the lean manufacturing with rather than like batching cars and creating all sorts of, red Toyota Camrys. I'm using this as this is way too ahead of the concept of when Toyota started, but that they would create or build them based on what the customer ordered. Same with like, if you think about a bakery of course has to have some basic things when you walk in at the beginning of the day. However, if you just made a ton of chocolate and white marble cakes, maybe not everyone wants that. And, you're gonna have to throw some away at the end of the day. So really building your process off of the customer needs and being able to pull that idea forward. And again, I'll get into some more examples. So once you identify all these things and you're kind of to that perfection point, where do you go next? And what happens when you get to the end of the process? And this is where that Brian McKnight step one, but at the end, when finish all the steps, you start it back at one. And that's the whole thing, is kind of and reevaluate the courses are available or whatever it might be. But yeah, just continually evaluating your process. So what's our value? Our value in our practice is providing high quality, personalized, comfortable, and enjoyable dentistry. That's something that, one, we're going to provide the best dentistry possible, that we're doing it based on what your needs are, that we don't just have like a standard protocol. You walk in with this kind of decay. We're going to talk to you about what makes the most sense in your life. Maybe, a crown does make sense, or maybe you come in and you're like, hey, this tooth's really been bugging me for a long time. I hate the way it looks. What can we do about maybe alignment, or could I get a veneer? Whatever it is. Mike's not just automatically diagnosing based on whatever concepts that he might have in his head, but we want it to be incredibly comfortable and an enjoyable experience, that it is a personalized experience. We know our patients. We actually have over 4,500 active patients at this point in time, which is insane. Mike is like an absolute beast. And I should have said that before when I was talking about our production numbers increasing. One thing about him is he will talk your ear off. He loves people. His favorite part of his job is getting to interact with all of the people that he does on a daily basis, which is fantastic. But he really just has such a passion for dentistry too. But he is a workhorse. He's not good at downtime. And I hate when he has downtime, because then he starts bugging me and I can't do my job. So my job is to keep him busy as much as possible with value added things, right? Not things that don't contribute to our business. So really, I think him, doing dentistry and being personal and remembering these things about our patients. And then we really bring that into our team to make sure that they're comfortable with the patients and that they make them feel, comfortable in the process. But if there's a part of our process that doesn't contribute to that value, it's trash. And my job is how to eliminate that trash, how to get that out of there. So I'm going to give you some examples of that. Speaking of trash, muda is the Japanese term for waste. There's 8 different types of waste. I'm not going to dig into every single one of these. Hopefully you'll have this recorded that you can look back later, or just look up lean types of waste and you'll be able to find it, no problem. This is a nice little acronym though of downtime, defects, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized talent, transportation, inventory, motion, and extra processing. These are things that are, I think, general concepts in manufacturing, but they're actually, applicable in every single realm of the world, in every single business. So I'm going to go through some different types of waste and kind of how we've addressed it along the way. So when I first stepped into the practice as an outsider, although I've really not been an outsider the whole time, but my life was fully in the medical world. I only was here like after hours. I wasn't here all that often while the day was flowing. So when I first stepped in it was May of 2017, I just kind of sat and watched the process, sat and like looked at what was happening and just started documenting. So things that really stood out to me when I walked in were downtime for employees. We highly trained employees. These are all employees that have, degrees or certifications that were fully capable of doing more, but they had downtime. They were waiting on things, waiting for patients. So either the patients waiting for a provider, or us waiting for patients to fill our schedule. too much unnecessary work on Dr. Mike, wasted time in our accounts receivables day. So our billing process wasn't like super efficient by any means. It was actually very slow. Yeah, downtime in the schedule. So open holes, open schedule blocks, and not maximizing time while we have the patients available. So the patients would come in for like their, cleaning, and maybe they needed to have a filling done. And if we even potentially had space to do it then, we wouldn't always make the offer to do it then. So we weren't maximizing, all of the patient's time, or even like making sure that we talked to them about, they needed a crown on this tooth in the past. They weren't always like looking at that ahead of time to be able to have that conversation. And then supply and demand issues. I think on both sides of things, that there was more of a demand of patients than we had availability to see them. But then also, like, I think our ordering and inventory and whatever. So anyways, we're digging into all this. So one concept of waste is overproduction. So I mentioned the fast track before, and that's kind of this right-hand column of patients. So our practice had grown, and a lot of that was word of mouth. We don't really do any advertising, which is great. Mike's really just a unique individual. And so he, if you're a patient of his, you're extremely loyal and never want to leave. Not to mention he's just like super fun. So you want to come in just as an opportunity to see him. I'm obviously a little biased, but the practice grew where we had too many patients and not enough hygiene appointments per year. So patients got Judy. Judy attitude is a phrase that we use in our office a lot. If they weren't able to get their 2 preventative cleanings per year. And that was kind of a disservice that we were giving them. We were not providing that optimal level of care by doing 2 cleanings a year. The concept of 2 a year, it's kind of muddy of where that came from and whatever, but it is helpful. And then honestly, most patients see their dentist more often than they see their medical doctor. And so we always have an opportunity to, take blood pressure, talk about medical history, and then make referrals to help the patient ensure that they're getting the right care. But so patients are upset. They weren't able to use their benefits. They weren't able to get their cleanings because we just didn't have capacity. We had 3 full-time hygienists. We were as efficient as possible with scheduling. I'll talk more about that later. But we were not able to see everyone. So we came up with this concept of a fast track cleaning and hiring an additional hygienist. So a hygienist, they must have their general supervision certification. And then the patient, to qualify to be a fast track patient and to get onto that schedule, they have to have been seen by Mike in the past year. They have to be a patient that's not just like with extreme rampant decay. They have to have overall fairly stable oral health. We always check in when we're scheduling. Do you have any concerns that we need to talk about? They receive their prophylactic cleaning. That's short term for a cleaning, and any x-rays that might be due. And then Mike goes back and reviews those x-rays and notes with the hygienist at the end of the day. So, and then the patient, if there are any concerns, if there's any problematic areas, they get scheduled back on his schedule on that restorative side over here to address those concerns. And then when the patient comes back for their next cleaning 6 months later, Mike will do their exam. He'll make sure he sees them. Or if they come back in the meantime, he'll do an exam. If they did come in for like a area of decay and a filling, he'll do their exam at that point too. So, yeah. Our demand was definitely greater than our supply. And that's when we came up, this idea of fast track. And it's been phenomenal. We were able to add, I think close to like 1,700 additional appointments a year. And that kind of varies because kids are scheduled for less time than adults, but that's, 1,700 additional 1-hour appointments. And so we're able to accommodate more of our patients. It's been a great thing. Dr. Mike has to go back and review things, but that's why I added only about an hour of administrative time for him a week. And it's obviously helped with our production and collections and overall business. So yeah, that is an overproduction concept. This defects one, I will tell you, I kind of threw in last minute, so let's work through it together. But defects, one of the things I mentioned, AR days, our accounts receivable days, we would, an insurance error. So we get explanation of benefits. This is the way we receive payments from insurance companies. Those would come in. And if there was some sort of an error, they needed additional information, or maybe the patient's insurance had changed. Basically, the person that was processing those payments would just like enter her note and then like pass it off and wait for like me to send statements to patients to identify, oh, wait, we don't have their updated insurance. And that could sometimes be up to, like almost a month. And so things would just sit out there and wait. Or if maybe the insurance needed additional information, that information was never passed on. And it wasn't intentionally. She just honestly never thought about it and didn't know. And, shame on me for not incorporating that as part of our process. So it just significantly slowed down our accounts receivable days. So if we can't bill the insurance, half the time we couldn't bill the patient. And then we had to communicate with the patient to identify, what is your new insurance? What are all these things? So now what's happening is when she gets that information, she's automatically, if their insurance has terminated, she sends them a text that says, hey, and we have a templated text that she can copy and paste it. It's like, hey, it looks like your insurance is, out of date. Can you just contact us with your new insurance and we'll rebill it to you, or rebill it to them, and you won't be responsible. And as soon as people know that they might have to pay some money, they immediately text back or they give us a call and let us know what it is. So that's been fantastic. And I think, it's handled 98% of those insurance termination issues. And then if it's the insurance needs additional information, that's given to our treatment coordinator who deals with it by end of day. So it's really improved our AR substantially, and that's money in our pockets. That's not money out there that we're having to fight. And any time that you're waiting to get that money, it's like less than, each day is less of a chance that you're actually going to get it. So yeah, that was a super helpful change. And it was a very, very minor one too. Waiting. So obviously you saw our schedules. Dr. Mike sees an average of, 50 patients a day. Our previous method of communicating with Mike. So I mentioned that the hygienist they do their full cleaning. And then at a certain point, Dr. Mike comes in and does the exam. And then on the restorative side, a patient potentially says toothache. So our assistant will bring them back, take any x-rays and do an evaluation and then work the patient up for Mike. So then all of these people are waiting for Mike. So they would be getting in queue to, get him to come in with their patients. And we always had trouble. Mike is wonderful, but he's always moving a million miles a minute, next place, forgets what he's doing, whatever it is. So we had methods previously of telling him, hey, we need you to go to this room next. The first one that was built into our old system was a light call system, very old school. You pushed a button and it buzzed real loud, and then a light came on outside the door. And honestly, it's great. It was a good old school system, but I didn't really want to build that into our new facility. The other part of that is you didn't know which to go to first. You just knew like 8 people back in the day, 3 people needed you at a time. And that's just, that wasn't really fixing our problem. So then we went to this idea of like note cards. And if you needed him, you would had a note card and it had like your room number, and it was like some basic information about the patient. And so you would go and find Mike where he was, and you'd put it on the work surface in that room. Well, people would just like put them on top of each other, or they'd get knocked down and they'd get out of order. It was just kind of silly. So then they ended up just like waiting in the hallway, and he constantly had a line of people stalking him. And it was insane. And he felt more pressure because it's like, you have like literally like 4 team members standing outside waiting for you. And then they're, want to be first in line because they want him to come into their room first and all this stuff. And it was just ridiculous. So I actually asked someone from another office, like, what do you guys do? How do you keep your doc on track? You're also very busy. And she said, oh, we have these, just a simple clothespin. This one has the room number on it, but they all have, colored ones are for the hygienist, and he knows which order to go in. And it's kind of error proofing the process because he knows, where to go on the pins. And if things are running behind, one of our assistants, because their job is like to be the traffic, like the traffic keeper. So they'll like rearrange the pins if needed to get certain patients out so that we can turn over rooms and whatever. And it seems so silly, but he's constantly walking around the pins on his pocket, but it tells him where to go. And when he walks into your room, the person that's working in that room just pops it off and, throws it in the bin. So then we're not missing any part of the process. And it's like a manual process. It seems kind of silly, but it's really taken the thinking out of the process for him. And it really allows the team to utilize their downtime to increase the value add for the patient. So they can go back in the room and talk to the patients, or talk to them about, whatever services additionally we offer, we don't really push a ton of that kind of stuff. But, you know, maybe they mentioned whitening, so that they can go back and talk more specifically about our whitening options, or they can go in sterile and do their cassettes and turn over the rooms and, you know, take x-rays for the next patient or whatever it might be. They're utilizing their time and they're not just standing in the hallway waiting for him. And this has been a huge benefit. And I really wish that I had data to support what kind of decrease in numbers we've had, but really it's been phenomenal. And it's like a stress off of his shoulders, which has been good too. Sorry, pushing buttons. And again, mentioning the fact that Mike is the one that everyone kind of needs to see. And my background in, you know, chemistry and pre-health studies, the rate determining step. I always think that he's the rate determining step. He's the slowest step in our reaction that determines the overall rate of the reaction. So if Mike is running way behind, our whole day is running way behind. So keeping him efficient is super important. And he's a man that like does stuff like this. Like you'll go into the break room and he's like, why is he doing a handstand? He's showing how long he can do it, or who knows? Like he's always got something funny. It's great. It's energy. We love it. But if he's not moving to the place he needs to be, everyone else is running behind. So really making sure that we are utilizing Mike to do only the things that only Mike can do. So he's not wasting his time. I mentioned earlier that our hygienists have the ability to anesthetize patients. So if a patient is scheduled to come in for a filling, Mike has already diagnosed it, it's confirmed, we know this is happening. The hygienist can go in and numb that area of the mouth. And this is, you know, he's done thorough training with them on how he wants them to numb. And this is like something that they've been trained on how to do. So they will go in and numb all the patients. Mike is rarely numbing patients anymore. So when he walks into that room, he can just get to work. He doesn't have to numb, walk out, you know, wait for 10 minutes for the patient to get numb and then go back in to do the work. He can literally just go in and start, you know, doing whatever it is that he's doing that day, extracting, you know, whatever it might be. So he is only doing the things that only he can do. And when I talked to him about, you know, what are some of the benefits that you felt with incorporating lean? And one of the things he said was, I think he was just trying to be nice to me, but was incorporating me in the practice, because then he didn't have to worry about any of the management stuff. He didn't have to make any of the decisions, the financial things, anything like that. And obviously we have a lot of trust for each other with each other financially being married, it's literally like, I handle that side and he just gets to do the dentistry, which is all he really wants to do anyway. So I think that utilization of talent is super important. And I think that, you know, we have so many people in our office that are brilliant and able to contribute to the whole in so many ways, that how do we use them so that they feel fulfilled, so that they feel like they're being utilized and it's benefiting the business. And it's like, okay, so if I have a hygienist, going back to that numbing thing, if I have a hygienist that is numbing a patient, he's going to be able to see that patient for that filling faster and then get into her room faster to be able to check her exam so that she gets to turn that patient over to see the next patient and she's not running behind. So fully utilizing your resources is super important. And I have some examples of other things too, or, you know, outsourcing. You don't have to do it all. That's the other thing too. You don't have to do it all. So some other ideas of, you know, non-utilized talent, that's kind of the concept of waste, but how we've elected to utilize talent is, was working ahead. Trusting our team members to get more or to do more really engages them in the process, and they feel like more valuable in the process. So our hygienist numb patient for diagnosed treatment, our FDAs will complete reversible dentistry. I kind of mentioned how they'll place fillings, and then you know, Mike, he does the prep, they place the filling, and then Mike goes and pops in and checks, you know, if needed, and then the patient's on their way. It's just so much faster. But then even things that are not part of that manual process, but other things that we have to do that are part of our business that I don't necessarily see the value add, but obviously it's important, like the OSHA stuff. It's important, I know it is, but really, it's the stuff that drives me crazy, which is why we've outsourced it. That's the thing. So we have an internal team member who's just, I call her psychotic to her face. She's wonderful. She's psychotic in the best way, that she is like anal retentive, wants to make sure things are done, that that we are all following all the rules, that the procedures are all being taken care of, which I feel that way very strongly about some things, but like the OSHA documenting that every year that we've gone through these training, all that stuff, that's one of the things that I don't love, obviously. Maintaining like all of our equipment and our maintenance issues and going through the medical emergency protocol. That's not anything we ever actually did until she joined our practice, that every month that we're practicing, you know, what do we do if a patient's pulse drops while they're on nitrous? Or what do we do if a patient becomes non-responsive? Or what if we do if someone falls and scrapes their knee walking in the door? And it's phenomenal. She loves it. We have people that manage all the supply ordering, and it's like they're kind of given a budget and they're given these certain, rules to follow and a certain system to follow, and they have the autonomy to take care of it. Instrument sharpening. They love that they don't have to sharpen the instruments. They manage it. They carry them up with this beautiful spreadsheet. They do a phenomenal job with it. Our implant systems, I think I'm taking too long. But manager patient relations, someone to handle, all the business aspects. That stuff's been super beneficial. Outsource it, give it to someone in your team, find align what people's personalities are with your work, but outsource too. Mike, wisdom teeth extractions, they take too long. It's a pain for the patient. And molar root canals, they take a long time. They can be calcified, difficult. Mike refers those now, and it saves time in the practice. It's a better experience for the patient. It's a win-win overall. So utilizing talent, it really shows strength and confidence and resourcefulness. People see you as being resourceful when you're utilizing your team to do these things. It makes your team members feel trusted and valued. They generally love to be the owners in the process. If you find the WIFM, it makes it even better. And then, aligning with the team member strengths is important. Oh, WIFM, it's like, put that on there. What's in it for me? Like I was kind of mentioning, we get out on time. They are not running late with their patients, that if they're helping in the back, numb for an assistant will go in, turn over the room for them. It's just that team dynamic and making sure that it makes sense. It's our secret sauce. That's what this concept is, Seemingly Ranch secret sauce. Our secret sauce is really just to utilize our talent. And I really feel like that's been part of what's gotten us to where we are. Defects, we want to really minimize defects, especially in healthcare and patient care. The margin of error really has to be minimal. So we don't want to accidentally pull the wrong tooth or, start a tooth for a crown, drill into a healthy tooth unnecessarily. So both the assistant and the dentist confirm that what's going on with the patient. The patient reads and signs a consent for care for every procedure. Sometimes this feels mundane, but it also is just that extra step to confirm that we're doing an extraction on this tooth and the patient understands that. Consistent handoffs. We always have these handoffs that it's the same phrase that's said every single time. Even if Mike knows the patient really well, we go over the schedule every morning. He knows what's happening, but it's that handoff to confirm, anything that might have changed. And it also, I think helps give the patient confidence, and it just keeps things straightforward on our side of things. And, the lean term of that is poka-yoke for error proofing. None of it's completely error proofing, but it certainly helps. Inventory, this is another area. This is one of my very favorite things, 5S. I didn't write that down, but that's a great concept within the lean management. But so much waste can be in inventory. One, like financially, our office used to order in bulk, and we'd frequently have, just large amounts of things that we then stopped using that product, or maybe it expired. But we took advantage of savings of ordering in bulk. But then that money, one, is tied up in that inventory. And then two, maybe we stopped using that product. So we stopped buying in bulk. Obviously, we still buy, like our gloves, but we buy them for 2 weeks at a time. We're not buying them for a whole year at a time. We're buying them for 2 weeks at a time because in our masks and that kind of stuff. The standardized types of materials we use, I don't have a lot of variation in the types of materials. We test them to make sure that we like them. But one of them is like fluoride. There's 8,000 flavors of fluoride out there. And all of my reps are always like, oh, well, what about the watermelon sugar kind, or, all this flavor? And it's like, no, I want like 4 flavors and that's it. Really? Are you going to the dentist because they have this crazy flavor of fluoride? I hope not. And if you are, good for you. That's the place you're supposed to be, but that's not where I want to waste our money. And it's harder to track and then making sure everyone has availability of it. But you want to make it an easy system that you can assess when you need to order more, that you're not over ordering, and that, it's a visual process. And that's kind of the concept of this tip out bins and walls. We do store a lot in the rooms. However, they're restocking the rooms daily from this area. So once this area starts getting low, we know to order more. So a simple concept, the 2-bin system. Many of you probably know about this, but it's basically you have enough for like 2 weeks. This first bin in the front is like what you're using right now today, when this bin is empty, you take it out, you pull that second bin forward, and you give that first bin to whomever is ordering to make sure that you get it in time. I'm very much dumbing it down, but there's, you know, a lot of measurements that go into how much you actually need, but it's just a visual management of when you need to order more. And it really helps to simplify that ordering process. So you're not having to go through each week and say, what am I low on? What do I need to do? It just does it for you. And I think that can really be applied in a lot of different areas. Spaghetti maps. This is a really simple concept. Look at things that you're doing over and over and over again to identify opportunities for ways to streamline, automate, or cut out manual concepts. This is a terrible one because I was trying to do it like on my phone. I should have done it with a piece of paper and a pencil like normal, just to show you an example. But so often when a patient would come in for like toothache, they'd walk in, go to the front desk, they'd sit down in the waiting room, and then they'd get called back to the room. They'd get up and they'd go to the room. They'd talk to the assistant about what they have going on. And the assistant says, okay, it's a toothache. Let's get you in for an x-ray. And we use this nice x-ray machine so we don't have to take those annoying ones all around your mouth. So they stand here, they take a quick x-ray. This is, hold on, actually I have a picture of it. This is what it looks like. It's fabulous. It takes like 5 seconds and it's not uncomfortable. So they would go and take their x-ray and then they would go back to the room. Dr. Mike comes and sees them, figures it out. They go to check out and then they leave. But here we're like crossing this line 3 times. And so we decided, why are we crossing this line so much? What's going on? Let's just get the x-ray from the start. We know toothaches, we're going to need more information. You know, we need to see more. The x-ray is always a beneficial thing. So instead, we brought the patient in, they get their x-ray taken right away, and then they go back to the room, they get their work done, and then they leave. The only crossover is when they walk in and out the same front door. And it's really cut some extra steps out of the way. Spaghetti maps are invaluable. They seem super simple. But you know, people are like, oh, I can't find a layout of my office. I always say, go to the fire escape plan and screenshot that and then, you know, print it out and then write on it. Put your pencil on the paper and, you know, follow the process and don't pick it up until you're done. And it'll show you where you have overlap and all that kind of stuff. It's just a very simple, straightforward, but awesome tool that's really helpful in cutting out piece of the process. Some other extra processing things that we were doing, you know, in the past, we were waiting to schedule 6-month recalls until closer to that 6-month date. But now we make that as a part of the hygiene appointment. One, patients will forget to call and then they miss out on their 2 a year or whatever it might be, or they call to schedule and we're booked out 3 months or, you know, whatever it might be. So at the end of their hygiene appointment, we schedule their next appointment. And if they're like, oh, I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing in 6 months, because I think the majority of us, right, we have jobs where, you know, that I always have X day off or I'm going to be done at 3 p.m. or, you know, whatever, I can come over for lunch. So those are generally just scheduled and they work fine. But if they're not scheduled, the patient automatically receives, you know, emails and text messages to schedule. That's not something we have to manually do. We used to have to manually do it. But then we, you know, established a process that we don't have to send like postcards anymore or anything like that, which is great. Templated notes. This is another concept that we use, things that you're doing over and over and over again. We have to write notes on every patient, and like a cleaning, it's the same kind of basic concepts that you're doing. It even comes down to like a checklist, but we have a template of the information that they have to obtain and then what happened in that appointment. So it's just the very basics, and then they fill out the note rather than having to write it fresh every single time. And it, you know, it saves their time and make sure that we are getting all the information that we need from a clinical standpoint too. And those checklists are just super great. Time studies are an awesome tool. Also really tells you, you know, how long things take. So very quick, you know, evaluation. Our appointments, we schedule them based on time studies in the past to identify that, you know, a one or two tooth filling, that kind of thing. It's usually like an hour appointment for all the steps in the process. But other things, when you have additional teeth to fill or extractions and implants, that those will take longer. So that's really just time stamping each step around the process and then, you know, finding your average and then allocating your day based on that. Our ASAP list, again, we have one dentist. He's a limited resource. I'm hopping through these quickly, but it's a really, it's a great thing. We have one girl that her whole job is to keep our schedule full. So like on this slide, you see this was blocked for an ER spot, but say we had this guy cancel. She has a list of patients that she knows what their kind of availability is Tuesday afternoons or Wednesday or whatever it might be. She can text them and she generally has appointments full, like within 10 minutes. It's so fast. And this is now like a Google Doc that's associated with our like private work email. So you can get to it from, you know, any computer within the office. And it makes sure that one, we're seeing the patients that want to be seen, that ask to get in faster, and then it keeps our productive time going. We also use it as a special list for patients that are last minute cancelers. Process maps, this is a great one, shows you where things get crazy. You can do really easy process maps. Just use Post-its and put them on the wall, focus on steps in the process, decision points, and let your team kind of guide the process. This is obviously ideal. You want it to be steps with simple decision points, but it can get crazy. And if you want to practice a process map concept, I always say like making a sandwich. This is good old Dizzy Whiz, that one's for Anne. But yeah, making a sandwich or brushing your teeth. 5 whys. This is another one. When you identify a problem and you want to get to a solution, start by asking why and continue asking why until you get to the real thing. A lot of times it has to do with, a misunderstanding or the wrong product used or whatever it might be. And just kind of knowing that a problem well stated is a problem half solved. Go to the problem. It's a big, big part of the lean process is go to the problem, look at it, what's going on. Checklists. I could do another full presentation about the benefits of checklists. This book's great, Audible, Headway, whatever you can do. Checklist manifesto. It's brilliant. Making sure that you're measuring your systems, and that you've got the right data points. Ask other people to make sure that you've got the right data points. It helps you identify success with more than just a gut feel. That's super great. Real results feel good to know we've increased by, 143% or whatever it might be. And it helps you identify when things start backsliding. Also key process indicators. Obviously you need to measure to know what you're doing with your KPIs. And if you're regularly measuring, you have kind of a continuous feedback loop. And then the concept of plan, do, check, act. That's always a good one. Fresh eyes are one thing that you can always bring into your process if you're not sure what's going on or you're not sure how to improve it, or just someone to kind of identify things. I love new employees to say like, oh, tell me if there's anything you think that like could be improved, or why are we doing this? Tell me, ask me. Bring in a trusted confidant from the outside. Ask someone from another industry, bring them in and show it to them. One thing just to really emphasize, failure happens and failure is going to happen. I think that the best part of being a small business is that you can quickly adjust to the market and the value according to the customer. Having been a part of very large hospitals and very large organizations, any change took forever. And I love that being a part of our business, that we can implement a change now, done. Like obviously we want to make sure that we're reading it and doing it, and we've done our research to make sure that it's right, but we can do it. And if it doesn't work, we can tweak it. That adaptability and flexibility are crucial. We need to learn and grow from our failures. This is a very expensive piece of equipment to do same-day crowns. We really hung a lot of goals on this, and it just really didn't come to fruition. And we basically accepted it's worthless. And the machine we can't get any money out of, I think it was over $100,000, and it's just scrap now. So there's nothing you do but laugh about it. And then vitamin C, we used to do weird vitamin C tests. Really no value added to those. If you're not flexible and adaptable, you're gone. Blockbuster and BlackBerry. I mean, truly, they just didn't stick with that. So kind of wrapping things up, some lessons that we've learned, and some things that really from our office, always and forever, our true north will be do the right thing. This is by our team, our patients, our community, really just do the right thing. Keep the human aspect involved. Obviously, all these lean things are super important. Get rid of the waste, do all that, but don't forget the human element of it. But make sure that you're analyzing it too. Treat your team like people first and employees second. Each team member, just as each team member is replaceable, we're also replaceable to them. So hopefully you're doing a great job of really bringing in the right talent, and then you don't want to lose them. There's so much lost in turnover. We really just don't want to treat them as a piece of the puzzle. Acknowledge and act like we don't know it all, while still remaining confident. We're always asking questions. It's probably more annoying than anything to our team, but really be quick to ask for help and make changes, embrace and learn from failure. And then take time to like review it and think about it. Be authentically true to who we are. Let social media be social. This is one thing I have to say. If you're using social for advertising, make it fun, make it social. That really helps a ton. And celebrate wins. Be excited even about the smallest wins. Really celebrate them. Life's too short not to. And I think that is it. I feel like I sped up real quick at the end. Sorry about that, but I just wanted to make sure that I was able to give a lot of information. So where do I go from here now, Dave?
That was fantastic. I mean, that was a full MBA in about an hour, I think. And so that was great. So let me ask you just a quick question. I mean, you fired just a ton of tools with this, and two things that really stood out to me was number one, taking the opportunity to look at the smallest things because there's opportunity in these small things, right? Like you always hear, don't sweat the small stuff, but really that's not true, is it?
No, definitely. I think even just, yeah, looking at those small things and seeing where is the value in it, what is the value, and just fully evaluating, each step of the puzzle, really. I mean, like you can't underestimate where the value lies, and even the smallest steps and parts of the process. And I think just because I just recently talked about it, a very small thing that we used to do, and I remember people freaking out about finding the availability of these stupid vitamin C tests. It was like a drop that we did in people's mouths. Really, there was like zero value add. We're wasting money on the test trying to find it. It was really just testing if people had scurvy, and that really is not something we have too much in the US anymore. And that's a very stupid, simple example, but like, really, is it needed? Is it necessary? And taking the time. But you can also get into bias, right? Yeah, I mean, like I'm sure we've been there where it's like, oh my gosh, where do we start? But it's like, how do you eat it out? Ask them about where they see the opportunities are more than you want to know. Sorry.
Mhm. So what's your favorite tool you shared? I mean, I've seen a lot of them, but I have not seen like the spaghetti map, or I mean, I don't know, what would be the first thing that you would tell somebody to do?
So one of the first things that I would generally tell people to do, one is Gemba, go to your process and watch your process always. But two, a process map. I think there's just a process map is invaluable. And I didn't spend enough time really talking about that. But I mean, honestly, Google it. You can find all information on Google nowadays. And there's so many resources that talk about process mapping. And don't overcomplicate it. Like literally go to a blank wall with Post-its and write down each step of the process and put it on the wall. And you're going to find that, I remember one of the bigger projects I did at cardiology department, and it had to do with getting a patient from a general cardiologist from one to the other. And this didn't include like the clinical pieces of the actual heart cath. This was like this.
Uh-oh. Darn, I think we lost Nancy. She was getting a little unstable there at the end. So looks like there's a few other, here she comes. There we go. You are on mute still, Nancy. There we go.
There. Is that better?
Yep.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So yeah, just the process map. We went from like an 84 step process down to, I think it was like 25 steps. And, some of this stuff just had to happen, I guess, again, like clinically to make sure that all of the, testing and all of that had happened along the way, but simplifying and, consolidating. Maybe we had 3 different nurses kind of touching a piece of paper along the way. It totally wasn't necessary. So, look at the big picture and use your team to say like, what can we do? I'm looking at a blank wall as I'm saying this, but like, what can we do to cut out some of these steps or these unnecessary decisions, or how do we, just get rid of the mood of the waste, right? Like what does fun one and 5S organizing all the things.
Yeah. Prem says unnecessary work on Dr. Mike. Could you give some examples?
Yes. So previously, obviously, as like the owner of a business, you are, well, especially in a medical field, you have sales reps that are always coming in and trying to sell you something. I am now the gatekeeper of the sales rep, or we have like a clinical person that always talks to the sales rep. No one gets to Dr. Mike unless I say they get to Dr. Mike, and everyone's very kind of protective of his time. If, handling the financial things. He doesn't write checks. He doesn't handle payments. He doesn't do any of these things anymore. And it's nice that we have obviously that level of trust between the two of us because we're married. But like, I think that you can get there with business partners and you can use different people's talents to do the different positions. The other examples is like the numbing. He actually used to get really annoyed when we have hygienists numb for restorative because he thought we were saying to him, you can't, like, you're not capable of doing this. And we're like, no, it's to make your job easier. Then you don't have to go in the room 3 times with the patient. You literally can walk in and be ready to go. And I think just like signing off on unnecessary documents, communicating with different like business partners of things. He's out of all of that. And those are sometimes moved when they shouldn't be. But those are super important for us to maintain that connection. So he still knows what's going on the business side and isn't just the day-to-day, handle one patient at a time. So he kind of sees the overall of how we're doing as a business and what we can do to work together to fix things.
Yeah. So did you use any statistical methods specifically for when you're doing the analysis?
So I do, I think a lot of them that we've done for like time studies, that was some that it was just honestly taking timestamps and, evaluating those timestamps. So breaking down the process, and literally taking a stamp in time for how long each step of the process took. So we could see what are those averages? Where do things stand? What are our outliers? And then what can we cut out? So, when we were doing these time studies, that's where we really identified. And I will tell you, Dave, I do not do the level of statistical analysis that I used to do. I'm not dealing with any p-values in my life anymore. And I'm kind of happy about it. Like, I enjoy statistics. I enjoy a lot of it, but like, that feels like wasted time. And for me, if I have more low-hanging fruit that we can measure a benefit out of without having to dig deeper. So I guess it doesn't have to be scary, but if you want to get into that level of statistical analysis, you certainly can. But when we were doing some of those time studies and measuring the steps in the process and measuring the patient experience, that's when we identified like those molar root canals, the endo on molars, that can go like south really fast because it can be a very tricky tooth just to access in general, but they generally have more calcified canals, which means that he's just like digging through concrete to get like the full procedure done. And so those, when they should be a procedure that takes, a normal root canal, start to finish, we schedule the patient for 75 minutes, it could turn into 3 hours. And that that screws up the rest of the day for everyone, all of the other patients scheduled. So those are the ones that had the most variation, that he'll still do them occasionally, but really those are the ones we refer out. And again, it's better for the patient too. There's a specialist that does this all day, every day. The amount of times you need a root canal versus, the amount of times you want to come in for normal dental appointments, it's substantially less. So people understand it and it's a better process for them.
Yeah. Zaymar says, did you record all savings from these improvements? That's a good question.
I do have different savings, and I'm so sorry I didn't have that available to document. I think I was spending too much time kind of showing examples of the waste. I could certainly share some of that down the road because the AR days, I don't even remember from when we started originally, but it was insane. I mean, our average was in the 80s for the days, like from closing an account.
Right.
And that's crazy. I mean, 80 days, and anytime you're dealing with a patient and money, if you have to send them a second bill, it just gets harder and harder and harder to collect your money, even to the point that we now do most of our collections up front. So they come in for their appointment, we tell them what the estimate is, and they pay their estimate that day. That's what the expectation is. If the insurance pays more, I send them a check right away. If our insurance pays, that's my favorite thing to do, is write patient checks, because who wouldn't be happy to get money back,
Right.
But then, if they owe more, it's not like I'm sending them a bill for, $1,700. Maybe they already paid an estimate of $1,500 and the insurance just had a small variation or whatever. And that's a big example. Not all dentistry is that expensive, but we do have recorded benefits. I'm sorry, I don't have that to share today. I should have. That would have been very helpful.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. And I just have to say, I was just blown away by the amount, if you just look at some of your numbers that you shared in the beginning, that when there was 2 dentists in the beginning, you've tripled it with almost less staff, or close to the same staff, and 1 dentist. I mean, that is just mind blowing, the amount of output you have done just by standardizing these little processes and stuff. I mean, it's crazy. When you guys were showing me around, I could pick right up on what was going on here, and we didn't talk any numbers that day, but I knew it had to be this. It was really impressive.
Mm-hmm. It's been, it's good. And it's really nice to have my own sandbox to play in too, that I can constantly make the changes. And we have a team that's really engaged and they want to be a part of everything. And we have so many meetings that we're like, hey guys, we think we want to do this. Like we have a therapy dog in the office. I didn't even talk about that, but that's like a huge part of who we are. We even have t-shirts that say Dwight on them, and everyone, I will walk through Kroger in Zanesville, and I don't even know who the child is, and they're wearing a Dwight shirt. And it's like, it's funny. And or we babysit the dog and I take him to the soccer field, and every single kid at the soccer field's like, he's the superstar. And it was the idea of, someone brought up the idea of a therapy dog, and we're like, I don't know, that feels kind of weird, but really vetting it through with our team and then kind of weighing the pros and cons and things like that, I mean, we feel their engagement, but I also think that they feel our trust and how much we want them to be owners in the process also. We have a really good team. I mean, we do feel very, very lucky with that, but we're also very intentional about who we hire. But yeah, it's a fun thing to do. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk. Sorry, I talk way too much and I
No, this
shared
is
more
great.
information than you wanted.
Hopefully everyone sees the value in doing this analysis and really thinking through in systems and in Six Sigma and Lean. So thank you so much, Nancy. And I'll probably hit you up and let's do this again. Talk a little bit more about those process maps. I think that'd be awesome.
Sounds good. Hey, thank you so much.
Okay. All right. See you soon.
See ya. Bye.
Bye. And thanks everybody for joining. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.